Hello, and welcome to Why Did My Builder Do That? The weekly podcast that will answer your questions about home design, home building, and much more. Of course, we will be asking, why did my builder do that? But sometimes we will ask, why didn't my builder do that? Or, will my builder do that? Or even, does my builder know about this? Each week, we will tackle new questions and hopefully provide insight into designing, choosing a builder, building, financing, and even maintaining or remodeling a home. From time to time, we will be looking at why or how something went wrong, but we will be asking about new building products and new building techniques. Along the way, we will also be talking about building standards and warranties. We invite you to email us questions, and we will make every effort to include them in future podcasts, or at the least, we will send back information or a comment on your questions. Email us at WDMBDT@gmail.com. Why would my builder do that? Join us now for Why Did My Builder Do That?
Hello and welcome to another Why Did My Builder Do That podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. It is Gary Dunn and Joe Bronson today, your hosts. As always, Yes, hello, Gary. We're going to be talking about vinyl siding today and some of the things that can go either wrong or great about vinyl siding. Oh my goodness. I've got to ask, why did my builder do that? These look like absolutely terrible siding jobs.
Well, Joe, one of them really is a really bad siding job, and the other one is a phenomenon that we're going to talk about today. Backing up a little bit, vinyl siding has become really prominent and in use at various price points. It's a much better product than it was first introduced many years ago. So I'm a big fan, and I've used it a lot. And I wouldn't use it at all if this problem occurred on every case. But what's actually happening here is sunlight is doing that damage, and it's coming off of a window on an adjacent property.
Oh my. So what exactly is going on? Can you share with us what that is?
Yep. Mother Nature is damaging that siding. In our effort to make houses better insulated and more energy efficient, we introduced what's called low E glass in most of residential homes across America. Low E glass reflects the sunlight. It helps, as you'll see here, it's reflecting the longer wave energy waves and keeping out the summer heat, while at the same time it's reflecting heat back into the interior in the wintertime. So it effectively is making our houses more energy efficient, but that energy being reflected back off of that glass is literally projecting a beam in a location that can cause the kind of damage we saw on that last screen.
Oh my. Well, I'm sure that our guests have questions in regards to this, and I know that I certainly do. And that is this, seeing this, is this type of thing dangerous? Could my house catch on fire? I'm sure they're asking.
Well, no, it can't, because we're only reaching a temperature of around 170, 180 degrees. And the good news is vinyl siding won't combust until it reaches about 700 degrees. So no, you're not in danger of the house catching fire, but you sure are in danger of maybe making a mess of the side of your house.
So in other words, if we are building on the sun, we have a problem with our vinyl siding then, if that's the case.
That is correct, yes.
I guess
yes.
One of the questions that, again, I'm sure that folks are thinking about, and I know myself, I'm asking, are there any kind of toxic fumes, being the fact that it is vinyl, as this starts to get hot, and God forbid, if it ever did catch on fire, are there issues there?
No, thankfully, we're not reaching a temperature again where any dangerous chemicals are being released. It's just a real aggravating thing to be happening on your house, and obviously an eyesore that has to be dealt with.
Well, is there anything that again, our guests, they're they're builders or builders in general. Is there anything they can do to avoid this issue?
Well, I think we're beginning in the builder community to recognize some of the things that need to happen to prevent this from occurring. Uh, Again, as you can see in this picture, you're getting reflected sunlight from a house adjacent to it. So obviously, not having windows in the side of the house could be a possibility, although we all like to have the windows. We like the daylight, sunlight coming into the house. So placing screens over the windows, potentially not installing low E glass on side windows. Uh, there are anti-glare overlays that you can put on windows to prevent this, and you could even put an awning on it to prevent it. So those are some of the basic ways to do that and still keep the beautiful windows on the side of your house. But it has to be done in cooperation between builders, because a lot of communities have multiple builders in them.
Well, once this has happened and occurred, I mean, it certainly is one of those things that people look at and go, "Oh my goodness, what can be done now at this point to correct the issue?"
Well, first and foremost, if it's happened to you, it's your neighbor's house that's causing the problem. So right off the bat, we better reach over that fence and be good neighbors and try to figure out how to solve the problem. Is your neighbor going to be willing to install screens or anti-glare on his windows to stop your problem from occurring? Maybe he's going to be willing to pay part of the cost. Maybe he's going to look to you to pay part of the cost. I should have mentioned earlier that one of the things that's happening here is the orientation of the house is obviously vitally important. It's got to be facing in a direction that allows the sun to reflect properly on the adjoining property. So your house more than likely would never reflect glass or glare onto his home, only his onto yours. So hopefully your neighbor will help you with that. If he won't, there's only a couple things that you could do to eliminate the problem, and that would be fencing or landscaping. Tall landscaping could block it. Small shade trees could block it. Those things are potential, but obviously, if you're in a neighborhood where there's not very much space between houses, you could be looking at real issues. I know one of the things, some people might be thinking is, well, what about insurance? What about warranty? Builders are not warranting against this issue because they're not creating this issue. So right off the bat, you're on your own, and insurance companies are not covering it either. So it really is one of those particular problems where potentially there could be limited resolution of it. One ultimate thing that could be done is replace the vinyl siding with a product that wouldn't suffer the same issue. For example, a product like hardy siding is not going to be subjected to the same issue. So perhaps the areas where the reflection is taking place could be selectively replaced with a matching siding or a complementary siding that would eliminate the issue. But it's not going to go away unless one of these solutions is done. So it could be a problem for a long time. Thankfully, again, as we noted, it's not particularly dangerous, but it's just unsightly, and it's not something you want to live with if you can possibly avoid it.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about the fact that it's not necessarily dangerous, but my mind unfortunately slips into the aspect of, are there other issues that possibly could be taking place and other damages that could be taking place unbeknownst?
Well, I'll relate it anecdotally. My first experience with this was thankfully not siding damage, but it was a shock nonetheless. I walked onto a job site one morning about 11 o'clock and was just walking from the street up to the house. And suddenly the temperature around me rose dramatically. And I
Oh,
realized what was happening is I was literally being subjected to that glare on my body. It could technically cause sunburn very quickly, and it most assuredly could damage your eyes. But of lesser concern, but concern nonetheless, it can melt pool covers, it can melt plastic cups, it could melt plastic furniture. It could actually burn grass or landscaping, not to the ignition point, but it literally, would dry them out so quickly that it would damage the plant or the grass. So there are things that can go wrong there too that aren't necessarily related to the house, but are an aggravation nonetheless.
my goodness. I guess I want to make certain that I keep my dog away from staring at it as well. So I guess
That's right.
what are some of the ways that we as homeowners can prevent this?
Well, again, if you're getting ready to build, maybe you're in a development. The good news is that if you're out in the country, it's probably not going to be a problem. Your own house might reflect and damage plants or landscaping. So you want to, if you experience the problem and don't want to cover the glass with an anti-glare or a screen or something of that nature, then just make sure you don't locate uh, materials in the way of that reflection. Again, that's only going to occur at certain times of the year because it all has to do with the angle of the sun and the time of the day and so forth. So, but if you're in a development, you need to be aware of it. You need to be talk to your builder about it and express your concerns that you don't want to experience the problem. You don't want to have something like this become a problem later on. If it's a development where they're building all the houses, they can probably work with you. If it's a development where other builders are involved, there could be a problem, and it might even mean you don't want to build a house. I think that's pretty extreme, but if you can't erect a fence or can't erect landscaping to purely protect your house, when for example you've built but there's no home adjacent to you yet, there's not a whole lot you can do other than, I guess, hope that it doesn't occur. Now, there are thousands of houses that this has never happened to, so it's not something that could happen to every house tomorrow. And you could certainly sit down with your builder and look at the sun orientation throughout the year, and there would be, maybe you're looking at lot 15 and lot 27, and lot 27 would never have the issue because the sun is not going to reflect off of the side of the house adjacent on either side to that property, but lot 15 might. So just being aware of this and understanding it might prevent something like you saw on that very first screen happening to your house.
Well, and that's interesting that you talk about the first screen. You had mentioned the fact that those were, and I could see it that it appeared to be just terrible jobs about installation and so on. What exactly was going on when it comes to what we're seeing there?
Well, in this case, and that was picture B from the front slide. This is actually a poor siding job. Somebody has misaligned the panels, and you're gapping improperly, and that is something that the builder and the vinyl siding installer need to address. But that we'll cover that in a later podcast, Joe.
Well, that's exciting to know. That's for darn sure. Until we're able to exhaust all the questions about that crazy siding issue. All I can say at this point is until our next episode, think about your questions, think about comments, think about what you might want to discuss, and send them in to us. You can see what our email address is, and maybe the next podcast that you join in with us, you'll see your question answered. If it's something that is urgent, by gosh, just hit us and let us know that that's the case. Send us the email with your questions, and we'll do everything we can to answer that at our next podcast or in another email back to you. Thanks so much for joining. And Gary, thanks so much for, again, being a gracious and great co-host along with me. Hope you all have a great week.
Joe, thank you. Thanks, everybody.